way bigger. These are different heights. I don't know if you can see that. Right in there, yep. chained up right here. I've got the hoist set up, and I've basically got this pretty close, almost in position here. It's a little tough to see, but just show you guys how I got it set up. So I got a jack right here, kind of supporting it. That seems to be the happy point for the balance. I've got it chained right here. I got it on the essentially the trans mount to the subframe, that bolt, and then right into the starter right here. And then I gave myself just an extension. Basically what I did was I used this dolly. I kind of pushed it over to here, set it on the ground right about here, and then I chained it up. I kind of scooched it, you know, into this kind of little nook here. I had the subframe all the way on the ground, and then basically just kind of used the chain, gave myself quite a long extension so I could hit it with the hoist, and then just kind of hoisted it up into position. And then once I got the transmission onto the subframe again, I did end up using a pry bar. I just stuck it right under the frame here and kind of lifted up, and then that gave me a little bit of room to slide these pieces of wood under to space it up so that I could, you know, freely roll the jack around where I kind of need to get the balance point. When I did hoist this up originally, I was on this side of this crossmember piece, and I just transitioned to the other side, and the way that I did that was exactly how the jack is positioned right now. You can see, I don't know if there's, yeah, so really just the jack is holding it in place right now, and that just gave me the ability to move the chain, scooch the hoist onto the other side right over here, and you know, continue getting a better and better position for this trans before I go ahead and slide it on. Decided against doing the dowel pin things with the case bolts. I'm just gonna try to go for it. I do have a friend on the way to hopefully give me a second set of hands and eyes. One thing I ended up doing while I wasn't looking, the hook for the hoist ended up catching this bracket right here. So I'm just gonna have to hammer that back down for the, I want to say it's the cruise control that sits there, something like that. So anyways, yeah, it just helps to have a second set of eyes while you're doing all this. So I'm just gonna scooch it and keep going. Alright, just another update. After fighting with it for probably, I don't know, 15 minutes maybe, I got the dowel pins to seat. I basically used this guy, and I kind of snuck in right under here, under this coolant line, and just kind of, once I got it lined up, I pinched this together to basically get this pin to line up. And then I was trying to get a case bolt to thread just to hold my place, because I didn't have a second set of hands. And I went to the backside. The backside was out like maybe almost an inch, probably 3/4 of an inch. And basically just how I had it. I don't have the jack in the equation right now, but just the hoist. I was able to kind of push it, and it really didn't take that much force. The other dowel pin seated, this one stayed put, didn't come out, and it's in. So now I just got to put the case bolts in, at least a couple, and then probably go for the torque converter, and then I'll probably get the subframe up. I gotta angle this guy to go back inside the car, steering shaft, but I think the hard part is over. Alright, just want to point out a couple case bolts, one right there, one right by that chain. There's one right there. I believe there's a ground right in there that's going to have to get attached. There's a hole there, right there, that needs a case bolt. Down low, there's a couple 14s. Right there, there, and then right there. Alright, just another quick note. I got the 22 on here. I'm just trying to get these torque converter bolts to line up, and I had the case bolts like kind of mostly in, or at least started. I wasn't going to tighten all of them yet, but I did have at least a couple just sort of, you know, so that the case was fully sealed. And I was noticing that the torque converter was having trouble spinning independently of the flex plates, so I actually had to back these case bolts off. I had to kind of stick a pry bar back in and pry it out and away again, and then I can stick a finger in there and move the torque converter now, but I was having quite a bit of trouble originally, so just make a note before you go for these case bolts. And really, you know, even like I would put maybe one or two in, and then I would immediately go down to the torque converter and just make sure that the bolts are lined up, just so you don't run into that issue. And then one more thing, these case bolts, one of them has a bigger shank on it. This one right here. So I'm going to start with this one, and the other one should line up. I put one in that was the one that was self-centering without Loctite, and then put the others in, and when I get back to that one I marked it. I'm just gonna take it back out and re-Loctite it, but basically just out. Of course. This is why you always want to have backup, because you don't want to make a parts run. Right now it's too late, the store would be closed. But that's pretty much all I do, is just a little bit. Just enough. And actually, I think before I even tighten them all, I'm gonna crank that one just a little loose, crank this one loose, loose. I'm gonna go back, put the others in, make sure they're all in, get them all to this point, and then once I know that they're at least, the threads are most of the way in, then I know I'm not gonna have any issues. In the past I've had a couple of these tightened on other jobs, and then it fucks with how the other ones go in. So I think right now, just to be safe, that's how I'm going to do it. I got the subframe up on 2 bolts in the front, supported by a jack in the back. I did have the steering shaft basically kind of fed up and into the car a little bit. So I think you know, the only real issue I'm gonna run into now, aside from like putting everything back together and maybe having to replace exhaust gaskets, the only other thing I'm gonna have to worry about right now is this passenger side axle with the dowel pins. And the more I think about it, the more I don't want to grind those dowel pins, but I think I want to compromise, because there's no way that I'm going to get that carrier bearing to separate without destroying that axle. So I think what I want to do is grind the dowel pins a little bit so that they're still there, they're not totally flush. Obviously, if you grind the dowel pins, the carrier bearing is going to be out of alignment, and it could create a vibration. I've ground them flush in the past on the 1MZ, and I really didn't have any issues. But again, I don't recommend doing that. That's just like a worst case scenario to deal with the rust, and to, you know, get these cars drivable, even though they get to be pretty high mileage. The car I did that on had 400,000 miles, so it wasn't going to see too many more years, let alone another brand new axle in that car. So that was my solution. It worked, but I think on this car I just did the timing belt, the water pump. I did a bunch of work to it. The transmission's going in, so I plan on driving it for a while. So I think the plan is to try and keep those dowel pins somewhat, but grind them down enough so that the axle will install still, without too much force. So that's the plan. And yeah, onto the case bolts on the upper, and I'm going to leave the rack where it is until I get that passenger side CV axle in. Sockets for that bracket for the exhaust. It's gotta be this guy right here. Alright, so just a quick update. I've got the case bolts in. I'm just now starting to sort out the passenger side CV axle dilemma. I've got this trans mount in, but it's these two studs I left loose for now, just in case I need to manipulate the motor at all any further. It looks like the subframe is pretty close to lined up. I've got the steering shaft, you can barely see it in there, but that is up and under the car. And then I'll show you what that looks like. Right now I haven't tried to reconnect it yet, just because I don't have the lower bolts in. So right there, there's a little dust boot that I'm gonna have to kind of fix back up into place, but I don't really have this exactly how I want it yet. I'm gonna have to get that U-joint into position, but there's a flat spot on that. It should go back into place. I'm hoping I don't have to do too much, but I am gonna, before I put the rear bolts in the subframe, I'm gonna make sure that this connects, just in case. And then over here on the passenger side, these dowel pins, where are we here? that dowel pin. There's 2 of them. I'm gonna try to sneak a little sander up here and just see if I can get them down a little bit. I still want them there. I'm gonna try to do it without grinding them flush, but I'm gonna take them down to like maybe 1/8 of an inch and see if that doesn't help the reinstall for this axle. Again, I've got the front bolts are in for the subframe, but the rear is still partially dropped. I've got the front motor mount loose. Right in here. Front motor mount's loose still. Just not really securing anything until I get everything where I want it. And after this passenger side CV axle goes in, I think that's really the hard part is pretty much over with. I am going to have to take each subframe bolt back out one at a time once I get them all kind of in position and put these brackets back up and in. And then the other thing I wanted to note is just this guy. When I pulled this out, it was kind of mangled, and this bolt didn't want to thread in by hand. That a lot, actually. Okay, so there's the before. Right there. And the ground down one right there. So it's still there. I'm hoping it still locates everything, but yeah, I mean that's quite a lot to have to pry out, so hopefully that's just gonna make this reinstall freaking cake. Look at all that oil, oh my god, I have to clean all that. Okay, so that actually worked perfectly. The passenger side axle is in. The bracket is seated nicely, and it was absolutely not a pain at all. So now you can see I still got to get this bracket up and in, and I think in order to do that, I'm gonna leave this subframe bolt over on the driver's side front. I'm gonna leave that on, and I'm gonna take this one out on the passenger side front in order to get the subframe to drop enough to get that bracket in. You can see it's pretty tight. And then one thing I did differently going in than coming out, I dropped the power steering belt just out of the way so I could have a little more room to sneak all that in. So now I'm going to try to get that bracket in, and hopefully it doesn't give me too much trouble. So this is the approximate amount of room you're going to need. I got this thing spaced up quite a bit. You see the hoist is in the equation, chained up around the throttle body intake area, and I basically snuck this bracket right up and in through here. So I think what I'm going to do right now is lower this thing into position with the mount still loose, or the bracket still loose. I'll thread this huge 17 mil in this guy. So I'll thread this in with the bracket loose, and then lower this into the subframe where I can put those 14 mil nuts back in place. Okay, so I put the bolt up in, so now it is tight. You can see the bracket spaced up a little bit, and the subframe, it now needs to come up and join the rest of the car. I don't think I'm going to put even the nuts in yet. I think what I'm going to do now is just make sure I can get these rear bolts in, and then once the subframe is in, I'll put the 4 nuts in, I'll tighten the trans mount, I'll tighten the front motor mount, and then everything should be back to normal. It should just be down to like the outer CV axles, the tie rods, sway links, putting the starter back in, the cruise control, the wiring, and yeah, hopefully we got a good tranny here. I don't know. I have my doubts. Okay, just a quick update. I was just putting these brackets back on, kind of going around the subframe one at a time. And then I realized, like I said in earlier clips, you definitely want to get the steering shaft up and in beforehand, because as you can see, this is with the subframe dropped. The shaft is, it was having trouble lining up, so it looks like this is going to be really annoying to do solo. So it's too short now, so I gotta basically just keep finding the sweet spot until I can get the splines to line up. Okay, that was a pain in the butt. Pretty much disconnected this upper bolt right here. Right there, that one. And then took a pry bar and pried right into that little crack right there, and basically just kept going up and up on the subframe with the jack. I got this so it, like, just the splines were just barely started, and then I would just put it up an inch and then pry right there and get this to just move down and down onto the shaft until I could get this bolt right in right here. I originally wanted to take this 10mm bolt with this nut out. It just wasn't budging at all, so I'm not sure why. I was hoping I was going to be able to get around that, because that would have been nice. Probably would have saved some time. Subframe is up and in, tight. I put the passenger side axle, the bracket, the 414s underneath the subframe, those are tight. The transmission mount is tight. Front and rear motor mount bolts, both tight. So I've just got the suspension on the outside that I got to finish up, the exhaust to put back in, splash shields, and then like the shift cable, everything on the front side here, cooler lines, sensors, all that fun stuff. I've put the shift cable back in, the cooler lines, I've got that little bracket holding that. Right down here where it meets the transmission, I do think I should probably connect the battery beforehand and just kind of shift through the gears just to make sure before I go ahead and put this bracket back on fully for the cruise control. I've got the electrical all hooked back up. There's a ground right there, as well as ground right there, and then there's one, this wire right here. actually goes to a case bolt. I don't know if you can see right there. Yep. So I got that on. This shock right here that connects to the subframe. When I originally, there's two 14 mil bolts, I think they are, that hold it to the tranny, and when I first lined it up, it didn't line up at all, and I actually had to pull the shock upwards to get these holes to line up. And then there's a little 14 mil nut and bolt right angle bracket that goes to the exhaust. There's also one on the back side that's held in with another 14 mil bolt just to tie everything together. Last minute I decided that because this exhaust bracket comes so close to this oil pan, I think I really do want to end up, before I put the exhaust up, I should probably change the pan gasket. I'm just going to scrape what I can with a razor blade, and then I'll show you how I get this spotless. This definitely makes life easy for prepping the surface, and I'm going to do that on the oil pan as well, but I'll show you kind of what you're left with. I've cleaned, and then there's the still left over. So it definitely does a great job. I would definitely recommend using that to save yourself some time. And then I'll hit that with a little brake cleaner or something just to clean it, get the oil off of it. Partially, almost there. It's really close compared to that surface. And I'm just using this black sealer that I got from the Toyota dealership. Honestly, I use it on just about all my cars. It's really good stuff. So I don't like to use the Permatex or anything from the auto parts store. Size holes here, I think I'm gonna cut probably this one. So we got second one in. I don't know if you have to do this, but this is just what I do. Go back and circle these in. So just so you guys can see, I circled each bolt hole, and I tried to hit in that. Okay, we're in. I put some Permatex muffler and tailpipe sealer on this. This is probably a long shot. I did not change the gaskets, so we're just gonna send it and see how we do. So if you ever want to do like a compression test on this car, or disable the fuel pump for any reason, circuit open, you want to pull that relay. That's for the fuel pump. So basically that's what I did. It's this guy right here. So I just pulled this up, and I'm just gonna crank it for a couple reasons. To, one, to get the oil pressure back circulating and somewhat back into the motor, and then another just to make sure that everything rotates as it should, starter kicks as it should. If you're gonna have any noises, this would be probably the point where you would. So just before I try to start this car and run it, that's how I was gonna kind of do the warm up on it. So yeah, I'm just gonna dump a couple quarts in it and then try cranking it, and we'll see what we got. See what she does. Okay. Here, now I can test to see if this shifter is functioning correctly. So I'm just gonna put into reverse. Okay, looks good. Neutral. Drive. Neutral. Okay. It's a little tight, so I think I might adjust it a little bit. Okay, so I just went through the gears again, and I just added basically 4.5 quarts to this thing, and it's just barely hit the cold mark, and the temperature got basically almost to the point of kicking the cooling fans on. So I think what I'm going to do is just run to the parts store, grab a couple more quarts, and just add until I get to the hot mark, I think. I'm going to let it cool down and check it again and just make sure it's kind of where I want it before I go for a test drive. Alright, I got back from the parts store. I got another 4 quarts, and while I was driving out there, I was thinking probably is going to affect how the fluid level looks if the front end is up. So I'm going to lower this car down and recheck it, and I might find that it actually has more than enough fluid. So I'm just putting the wheel wells back together, and I'm putting this shield up and in, and you know, there's a couple broken bolts on it. I don't plan on really reattaching it with all the hardware. There's some bolts I think that broke, like up in the front core support area, but I just want to show you a quick trick. For anything that has like these like square looking, I guess they're like nutserts that are like welded. They look like this. If you want to get them out, it's totally possible. I use this guy. I got this thing from Harbor Freight. It's just an air hammer. But that's what I did over here because they broke on both sides. So I'm just going to show you how to get that out. I think that's where the wheel well connects, like the splash shield. So I think what I'm just going to do is nut and bolt it, and I'll show you how to get this out. And this applies to any of these. I mean, they're all over the car, so you know, wherever you have something like this on the backside, you can definitely use this method and get it out. And if you don't have access on the other side of it, maybe you can zip tie, whatever you're trying to re-secure. I mean, it just would help to not have bolts just broken, then they're totally useless. So there we go. I got the same problem on the front here. I got 1 broken there, 2 broken, 3 broken, 4 broken. Man, I found a little bit of metal at the bottom of this pan, and I was pretty nervous, so I'm really hoping this thing lasts. But so far so good. I want to get it on the highway, see how it does. But first test drive's looking good. Everything feels pretty good. Alright, quick last minute thing I wanted to just do was just go over everything I used. So I just laid all these out just so it's a little easier to see all the tools that I needed, or that came in handy. I mean, obviously you can get the job done with many different variety of tools, but this is just what I used. You know, obviously the dolly to get the transmission up. This says engine support bar. Here's the item number 96524. So definitely came in handy. The jack, obviously, big help. The hoist, I used obviously some extra bottles to catch the oil when I did the oil pan gasket. Some jacks, brake cleaner, that was big for the oil pan gasket job. The razor blade obviously helped scrape everything. Used my wrenches, the double box end 14 that came in handy for the rear engine mount bracket. A set of like these are like angled needle nose, and they're kind of interesting in the way that they bend. They kind of give you a little more clearance in tight spaces. You don't necessarily need these, but they helped for like the cooler lines. Some blue thread lock, some gloves. Can never have too many flashlights. This is like a headband, like dome light kind of thing. Got the torque wrench here, miscellaneous pry bars. I mean, of all lengths. You can never have too many for this job. This is big with the pry bars. This guy, I'm not really sure what you call this thing, but it just helps to you know, line your bolt holes up, whether that's case bolts or motor mount bolts, anything that you're having trouble getting into position. This is huge for, it came in super handy for getting things to thread in by hand without having to, you know, just hope and pray. And then I used punches. I broke one doing the tie rod. But this one I used as like a smaller one of these guys in tight spaces. So this guy actually helped kind of locate things. But yeah, basically, you know, and then over here I got a couple flex head ratchets, 3/8 straight drive, just, you know, kind of on the smaller side of things. I got this stubby here that has 1/4 and 3/8. Love this thing. That thing's awesome. Regular 1/4 inch. I use this mirror to kind of see, like on the case bolts, if I was lined up or not, or just to get a reference of where I was, if I was too far up or too far down with the hoist. And then I use these extensions that are, let's see if I can get that to focus. They're kind of like beveled at the very tip, and that just helps so that if you put a socket on it, it just gives you a little bit of play, just in case you're not 100% straight shot at it. And I've got those in 1/4 inch and 3/8. That's what I used for the, I think it was like the oil pan and all sorts of bolts, 14 mil, 12 mil, stuff like that, that are all around the transmission. And then just this like electric AC Delco fucking ratchet that came in handy. My electric impact, this guy, the drill with the bit on it for the tie rods, just drilling those out, helping clean that up. And then I did use a 1/2 inch impact gun, pneumatic, and 3/8. Couple hammers, just you know, in case I needed to hammer one of these guys in, or a pry bar, all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's amazing how many tools you need to do a job like this, but it came in amazing handy. So anyways, just wanted to say thanks again for watching, and hope this video helps you if you attempt to do this transmission yourself. It was a bear. It definitely was a bear.